Troy editing this video. I just now realized that for like the first 5 minutes I sound really dead inside. So, you're gonna have to bear with me. I promise it'll pick up later, but just trust me. Okay, to start learning Yu-Gi-Oh, we should go over the types of cards. These are the basic cards that all can be found in your main deck, which goes here. As you can see, I'm pointing to it right here. Okay? There are 3 types of monsters that go into your main deck. You can tell it's a monster. Monsters have a lot of different colors, but you can usually tell it's a monster because of its attribute, its level, stats down here, and the typing. So this one here, Cloudian Smoke Ball, is what's called a normal monster, which has this sort of vanilla background. Normal monsters, they have no effect. They're just their attribute, level, attack, defense, and typing. They have funny little flavor text, which is just lore. If you're into lore, that's nice, but that is all normal monsters do. Then there's something else called an effect monster. Effect monsters, well, they have an effect. They affect something. Or there's different kinds of effects, which I'll explain sometime in the future, but you see, this Cloudian Smoke Ball, that blue attribute means water. It even says water up above it. It was a level 1 with only 200 attack and 600 defense. And how you use just a monster is you can normal summon it out or set it face down. You can normal summon a monster once per turn. That also includes settings, so you can either normal summon or set it face down. Once per turn, you can special summon a monster, which is any sort of summon other than a normal summon, as many times a turn, infinite amount per turn. But anyway, that's the basics of monsters. This one is an effect monster. This is Evil Hero Malicious Edge. It's an Earth attributed level 7 monster, a fiend with 2600 attack and 1800 defense. So the different levels of monsters means is how they can be normal summoned out. Cloudian Smoke Ball is a level 1. So levels 1 through 4 do not require anything. When you normal summon them, you can summon them out to any of these 5 monster zones here. So just bop and whatever. Level 5 and 6 monsters require 1 monster to be tributed. So say this Cloudian Smoke Ball was already on my field and I haven't normal summoned yet, and this monster was level 6 or level 5 or 6. I just have to tribute this and it gets sent to the graveyard over here, and I can summon this monster here or wherever I want in these 5 zones. So this monster, since it's a level 7 onwards required 2 monsters to be sacrificed. So say I had 2 Cloudian Smoke Balls. I don't have it. I don't have 2 Cloudians. So say I had 2 monsters here. I would send both of these to the graveyard to summon this out in either face-up attack or face-down defense. However, Evil Hero Malicious Edge has an effect to where if my opponent controls a monster, I can tribute this using only 1 material. So say this Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit was on my opponent's side of the field, and this Cloudian Smoke Ball was on my side of the field. I could just simply tribute this as my 1 due to this card's effect, and then summon it out. That's a very, very simple things. There is another type of monster called a ritual monster that has this other dark bluish tint. But I will talk about this and its respective spell card last. But speaking of spells, the next kind of card is spell cards. So there are many different types of spell cards. So we have this card, which is called Double Summon. So normal spells have no extra insignia up here. They just say spell card. So Double Summon is, since it's just a normal spell, you can activate as many spell cards as you want per turn. It just has infinite amount, unless the spell card says you can only activate one a turn, or restricts you in some other way. But if it doesn't say it, then you can activate it an infinite amount of times. But so I activate this. I'll activate a spell card. To activate it, you just slap it down. You do whatever the card says, and then after it's done, a normal spell will go to the graveyard. After. Has no other special staying powers. It just goes to the graveyard after it's done. In this case, double summon allows me to summon 2 monsters per turn, 2 normal summons. So I'll just summon this Cloudy and Smoke Ball, and then I can tribute summon this Evil Hero Malicious Edge. Or if this was another level 4, just slap them both down. Very simple. And so the next kind of spell card that I'm going to talk about are continuous spells. Continuous spell cards and their trap card counterpart, continuous traps, can be identified with a continuous insignia. It's like an infinity symbol right up there. And when I activate a continuous spell, it just gets slapped down in a spell and trap zones, which there are 5 here. Same with monster zones, there are 5 monster and 5 spell zones. I can slap it down in any one of these 5 zones, and it stays there until another card would destroy it, or it itself destroys itself, or says it to send it to the graveyard. So this won't go to the grave unless something else tells it to. So this one is Supply Squad, and its effect reads, once per turn, if a monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can draw 1 card. So, if this Cloudian right here was destroyed in some way, this effect is now, this effect now activates, and I can draw a card. Drawing a card is just, taking the top card of your deck and then adding it to your hand, and it's a draw. Everybody knows what a draw is. So that's continuous spells. The next kind are equip spells, which are like continuous ones. You slap them down, but you have to target a monster to equip it to. So this is Snatch Steal. Its effect reads, take control of a monster on your opponent's side of the field and equip it with this card. And then increase their life points by 1,000 during each of the standby phases while this is on the field. So I have this Snatch Steal. Say my opponent has a Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. I can take control of that, set it here, and then this equip spell will stay on the field as long as this card's on the field. So this will stay here until this is removed. Now, say if this was sent to the graveyard, this would go to the graveyard, and I also believe if this is if it's still technically on the field, but not in the same way as it was when this was equipped, the equip spell will fall off to say, and will also go to the graveyard, but the monster is still not in the graveyard. So it's not always that the monster has to be destroyed, but that is one of the ways an equip spell can fall off. So the next kind of spell card is something that's called a field spell. Field spells, very simple. They're a spell that affects the field. Now you might say, well, doesn't continuous spells also do that? A spell that stays around and affects the field? Yes. But shut up. So, field spells, a spell that affects the field. This one's Umi, and its effect reads, all fish, sea serpent, thunder, and aqua monsters on the field gain 200 attack and defense, and all machine and pyro monsters on the field will lose 200 attack and defense. So, it has its own special field zone right here, and will stay there until something else destroys it, or in this case, if I had another field spell, and I tried to place it there, it will go to the graveyard. Something spells and traps have that you can do is set them face down. So, if I didn't want to activate the Snatch Steal, I could just set it face down. Instead, I didn't want to activate it, but it's not in my hand anymore for whatever reason you would want that. If you'd think if I were to set a field spell, it'd set right here, and then when it's done, it would go over there. But no, you'll set it face down in the field spell zone. which kind of looks weird, but yeah. And then, when like most spell cards, with the turn you set them, you can flip them up, unless something is telling you you can't. But here's another kind of another spell card, another spell type that throws a bit of a monkey wrench into the like whole thing. So this is a quick play spell. Quick play spells are very versatile. So I can either activate them like, okay, let's put this back here. I can either activate them like a normal spell card and just slap them down and use their effect, and then they go to the graveyard. I can also use them in response to something else. Now, all of these spell cards have to, like, you cannot use them in a response to something. You have to, like, unless they specifically say that they're a quick effect. Quick play spells, they're built in, so, like, say, I had a monster effect, and I activated. That creates something that's called a chain, which I'll explain a chain in depth later, probably in a different session. But it would start a chain, and then a quick play spell is the only kind of spell that, by base kit, you can chain it to. So this would be chain link 2, and then its effect would trigger. So since this is Cosmic Cyclone, I would pay 1,000 to target a spell and trap and banish it. And also, the other neat thing about quick play spells is that if you set them face down, you can't activate them for the rest of the turn when you set them, and then your opponent's turn, which is the next turn after you, when it goes to your opponent, you can now use them like they're trap cards, and spring them and then use their effects in response to something else. Speaking of trap cards, we are on to those. There are 3 different types of traps: a normal trap, a continuous trap, and a counter trap. So, trap cards, their basic mechanic is all the same. You have to set them face down on your turn, and then you pass the turn, it goes to your opponent, and then they're live. You cannot use them the turn you set them, and on your opponent's turn, that's when they become live. So, once your trap card's activation requirement is met, in this case, when a monster is, since this is Torrential Tribute, when a monster is summoned, I can destroy all monsters in the field. If my opponent, like, slaps down this Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, I can flip this over and destroy it. And destroy all the monsters, but since it's the only one, it's the only one that goes. So the next kind are continuous traps. They're the same as continuous spells, except you have to set them face down and use them on your opponent's turn. They're marked with the same insignia, and they basically just work the same. So Solemn Wishes here. Every time you draw a card, you gain 500 life points. So yeah, say it was my draw phase, I draw a card, whoop, I gain 500 life points, and it's pretty nice, and I just stay there. The third kind of traps are a very, very interesting kind of trap card. They are called counter traps. Now, they work the exact same as a normal trap, except for one thing which is crucial. They cannot be responded to unless it's another counter trap. So, counter traps usually have to have something to like that they're responding to initially. So let's set up a scenario here. Say my opponent flips. I summon this Ghost Ogre. My opponent flips Torrential Tribute. Okay, and then I decide that I want to activate Curse Seal of Forbidden Spell. I can. I actually, hold on. No, I missed it. Okay. Anyway. So say my opponent's activating me. Since they activated a spell card, I can now discard one spell, which is discarding something is just sending it from your hand to the graveyard. So I could discard the Snatch Steal to negate the activation, and they can't activate the spell cards with the same name for the rest of the duel. But so since that was a counter trap, it's the end of it. It's the end all be all of it. unless they respond to me with another counter trap, I can't use this thing. I can't use Cosmic Cyclone. I wouldn't be able to use a monster effect. I couldn't use any other thing. So the reason you would have to those are better than a normal trap card is specifically because they can't be responded to with anything other than themselves. So that moves on to the final two types: a ritual monster and a ritual spell. So these two cards, working specifically with each other. So how these work is you have to have a certain amount of monsters. You activate your ritual spell, and then your ritual spell will tell you what level you need. What monster. It will tell you the level that you have to add up to with monster levels you're using for a sacrifice. So this ritual monster here is level 8, so I have to send monsters from my hand or field to the graveyard that equal 8. So this Malicious Edge is 7, and this Smoke Ball is 1. So I send these to the graveyard to ritual summon this monster. These are the special type of monster. Every other special kind of monster resides in the extra deck, and that's what I'm going to go over now. So, there are... actually, I lied a little bit. There are Pendulum monsters. These go in the main deck. Fusion monsters, Link, Synchro, and Xyz. Which, these are the different summoning mechanics that make Yu-Gi-Oh! So complex, but yet so interesting. So, we'll start with the first ones. The first extra summoning mechanic that was added, which was Fusion. Fusion monsters typically require a fusion spell and some materials to fuse in order to summon the monster. So, here the fusion monster I'm trying to summon is Elemental Hero Flame Wingman. So, I would use my Polymerization spell card. I can fusing monsters from my hand or face up on the field, or it's important. Fusion summoning, I can use face down monsters too. With other summoning mechanics, you can't. But face down monsters, I can use them for a fusion summon, and I'll fusion summon Elemental Hero Flame Wingman. Now, there's these other monster zones that are called extra monster zones, and they're up here. I can only use one. There's a very specific scenario where you can use the other one, but I can only use one of them at a time. And so I can either summon them here or any of these monster zones, and that goes for all extra deck monsters except Links. So yeah, I fusion summoned with those materials. I slap this down in whatever zone I want to, and Polymerization would go to the graveyard, and then now I have a fusion monster. Something to note is that the monsters used for a fusion summon are tagged with being used as fusion materials. So for the sake of another card effect that would say that to target a fusion material in your graveyard, you need to go and remember that these two are considered fusion materials. The next summoning mechanic that was released was something called Synchro Summons. Synchro Summons need two monsters. You typically need two monsters, and they usually require one tuner, which is shown by a tuner word being right there. So, if you have a tuner and a non-tuner on the field, you can use these two as synchro material to summon a synchro monster. The levels of the two monsters you're using as synchro material have to add up to the level of the monster you're trying to summon. So Seer Warlord Savage Dragon is a level 8, Soling Oviraptor is a level 4, and Scrap Raptor is a level 4 as well. Scrap Raptor is a tuner, Oviraptor is not, and since they add up to level 8, I can send them both to the graveyard to Synchro Summon Warlord. Again, they're tagged as Synchro material in the graveyard, and that's all for Synchro summoning. The next kind of summoning mechanic is Xyz summons. Xyz summons also need two monsters. Xyz monsters need two monsters of the same level typically. So, say I have Elemental Hero Stratos and Elemental Hero Clayman. They're just kind of chilling here on the field. And I can overlay these two on top of each other to summon Tornado Dragon because its materials are 2 level 4s. I have 2 level 4s, so I just overlay on top of each other, and boom, there's Tornado Dragon. These two monsters here will stay on the field until either Tornado Dragon's removed or something causes them to be removed aside from the monster being sent to the graveyard. Let's say a card effect, or this monster's effect that states to detach an Xyz material to destroy a spell or trap. And that's all for Xyz. Oh, actually, that's not. Okay. Xyz monsters have a special thing. They don't have a level like every other monster does. See, Stratos has the 4, Clayman has the 4. Tornado Dragon has a rank because it's an Xyz, and it's rank 4 indicated by the 4 black stars versus the orange ones. That is important. Again, also these are tagged in the graveyard as Xyz material. The next summoning mechanic before Link was pendulums. Okay, so pendulums have this extra bar up here that can either have this one doesn't have another effect, but they can have two effects: a pendulum effect whenever they're in the spell and trap zone, and a monster effect. So how you use a pendulum monster is you can set them in the far left and far right zones of your spell and trap zones, which are called the scales or the pendulum scale zones. And those numbers on the sides of the card indicate what their scales are. So Fire Opalhead has a scale 0, and the Mild Turkey has a scale 7. So if I am over here, and I want to pendulum summon, I can pendulum summon anything between 0 and 7, meaning anything from 1 to 6. And I can do as many monsters as I want from either my hand or face up in the extra deck. Well, you haven't shown us anything that goes face up in the extra deck. Well, I'm about to, because when a pendulum monster is destroyed, it doesn't go to the graveyard. It goes face up in the extra deck. So, pretend that there's another Mild Turkey here, and then I go to pendulum summon. I can summon Clayman and Stratos there from my hand, and then Mild Turkey from face of my extra deck. And as you can probably already guess, if you're not using them for pendulum purposes, you can use them as just normal plain Jane monsters. The next kind of summoning mechanic is Link, the final one to be added as of this recording. Links are the simplest of all because they do not require any special things. If you meet the Link monster's requirements, you can send the materials to the graveyard to summon the monster. However, they come with their own complicated mechanics once they're on the field. So Nightmare Phoenix, its materials are two monsters with different names. So Clayman and Stratos have two different names. I can send them from the field to the graveyard, summon it. They have to go in the two extra monster zones initially. You can't just summon a Nightmare Phoenix to this zone because the rules say you can't. So you have to summon it here, or here, whichever one. And then, you might ask, how do you summon another Link monster? Well, you'd be able to summon to another zone a Link monster points to. So that's their unique mechanic, is that Link monsters have arrows. So Nightmare Phoenix points one up and to the right. So sitting there, I cannot summon another Link monster unless I use this monster as material, and so I can free up that zone. But these zones here I cannot use for another Link monster because there's no Link monster that points to. Say I have, instead of Nightmare Phoenix, I have Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess right there. And then I go to Link summon Nightmare Phoenix. Well, now Appaloosa has arrows that point this way, and down. So I could summon Nightmare Phoenix in any of these three zones. But for the purposes of what the next thing I'm going to explain is, I'm going to go right here. So now, there are two Link monsters pointing at each other. Nightmare Phoenix points directly up, and Appaloosa points directly down. So now they're pointing, like their arrows are pointing directly at each other, and that is called a co-link. A co-link itself doesn't do much. It's just kind of there. The only purpose it serves on its own is that co-linked monsters if you somehow manage to have a link chain that goes all the way around into your opponent's extra monster zone, then you can summon a Link monster there, and that is called a U-Link. Before, in the olden times of Yu-Gi-Oh!, that would mean your opponent couldn't summon from the extra deck at all, but now it's not that big of a deal because the rules have been changed. And that's about it. That is the core monsters and monster spells and traps of Yu-Gi-Oh! The next thing to go over, and is here where I'm going to clear the field, is a turn. A turn is kind of complex, but not really. It's got some things about it that you might not understand, but overall you can understand it pretty easily and pretty quickly. So, I'll just go and set everything up real quick, back to how it was initially. Okay, so I'm back here at square one. So a turn, well, first off, before you even get into the game, you are supposed to either flip a coin and whatever it lands on. So say I'm playing with another person and I call heads and we flip a coin, it lands on heads. I get to choose whether I go first or second. Likewise, my opponent it lands tails, my opponent gets to choose first or second. So a turn goes very differently based on first or second. If I'm going first, so to start out the game, both players draw 5 cards off the top of their deck. This is the opening hand. Then, you would go to the first phase, which is called draw phase. Now, since on the first turn you don't draw, but on the second turn you would draw. So it would go from draw phase to standby phase. Standby phase is exactly what it says. You just stand by and nothing happens. In the game itself, nothing happens unless a card effect specifically says that it occurs in the standby phase, and then it happens in the standby phase. Then we move on to what's called a main phase 1. Main phase 1 is where you do all the stuff I just taught you. You activate spells, you normal summon monsters, you activate spells, yada yada yada. It's fun. Then after your main phase 1, on your first turn, you go straight to the end phase and you end your turn. However, if you're going second and from second onward, you can enter 2 other phases, the next one being the battle phase, which is where the attack and defense of your monsters come into play. So, say I slap down Elemental Hero Prisma, and my opponent has Elemental Hero Avion in defense mode. Well, actually, we'll keep it in attack, just for now. So, I say that I'm going into my battle phase, and then I declare an attack with my Prisma onto Avion. What happens now is that the difference between my Prisma's attack and Avion's attack is now dealt to my opponent as damage, because there are no other effects interfering with this battle, so it's just straight bang. So since my Prisma has 1700 attack points and Avion has only 1000, they will be dealt 700 points of damage, and both players have 8000 life points to start out with. But it can change on the duel, as I just showed you. If a monster is either in face down defense and I declare an attack, I flip the monster face up and then the attack occurs. But since it's in defense mode, no damage is dealt unless this monster would have an effect that deals piercing battle damage. And that's it for battling, mostly. Then, after my battle phase, I have one of 2 options. I can either move into my main phase 2, which you can do all the same stuff as in your normal main phase, as in your main phase 1. You can normal summon if you haven't already. You don't get an extra one in your main phase 2. You can normal summon if you haven't already that turn. Activate spells, activate traps, all of that. And then either straight out of your battle phase, you can go to your end phase and in your turn. That is the general overview of the Yu-Gi-Oh cards and a turn. It's not that difficult. Like once you really ingrain this stuff into you, it becomes muscle memory. And that's really about it.